Hello, dear YouTube viewers. I hope you're doing well. Okay, so let's start our video. The story begins with the brother reflecting on where he stands in life. He is in his early 30s, working a steady job that pays well enough to give him a sense of security he didn't always have. His financial situation isn't extravagant, but it is comfortable, enough for him to pay his bills, save a little, and make upgrades when necessary. He carries himself with quiet confidence, shaped by values he learned the hard way: loyalty to those who stand by him, independence that keeps him from relying too heavily on others, and fairness that makes him weigh every decision carefully. His family has always been complicated. There is love, yes, but also unspoken tension and judgments that simmer beneath the surface. He often feels like he has to walk a fine line with them, careful not to ignite unnecessary conflict. Among them, his divorced sister is the one person he feels most connected to. He has watched her go through the worst season of her life, an ugly divorce that left her not just emotionally scarred, but also financially unstable. While the rest of the family often speaks of her with whispers and criticism, he sees her differently. To him, she isn't a failure, just someone who deserves a fresh start and a fair chance. He remembers how she stood by him in small but meaningful ways when he was younger, and that loyalty matters to him now. At the heart of his decision lies an old car. It isn't flashy or new, but it's dependable, with years of good service behind it. He bought it with his first real paycheck, back when life was just starting to open up for him. For that reason, it holds a layer of sentimental value. It represents late nights of overtime, sacrifices he made, and the quiet pride of knowing he could afford something of his own. Yet, his circumstances have changed. He has recently upgraded to a newer car that better fits his current lifestyle and career. The old one, while still useful, no longer plays a central role in his day-to-day life. Meanwhile, he can't ignore the reality his sister faces. Without a reliable means of transportation, her days are a constant struggle. She juggles part-time jobs, errands, and the needs of her children with limited resources. Public transport is unreliable where they live, and borrowing rides only adds to her feeling of dependence and shame. She doesn't complain much, but he notices the exhaustion in her voice and the way she avoids asking for help. What makes it worse is how the family treats her, often as if her divorce is a stain that can never be washed away. Rather than supporting her, they weigh her down with judgment, leaving her to shoulder burdens alone. In quiet reflection, he comes to his decision. The car doesn't mean as much to him anymore, but to her, it could mean freedom. It could mean getting to work on time, picking up groceries without stress, and having a little dignity restored. He doesn't make a big announcement. Instead, he chooses a private, almost understated moment to tell her. The look on her face when he offers the keys tells him everything: gratitude, relief, and the faint light of hope returning. For him, it isn't just about giving away a car. It's about honoring the values that guide him, about lifting up someone he believes in, even if others don't. Deep down, he feels proud, not of the material gift, but of the chance to help his sister stand on her feet again. The first wave of reaction came sooner than he expected. Within days of handing the keys to his sister, the news had spread across the family like wildfire. What he had seen as a private, personal act of kindness somehow became everyone's business. His phone lit up with calls and messages, not of congratulations or support, but of outrage. Parents, siblings, even cousins weighed in with sharp words. They couldn't believe he had given the car away, and worse, to her. The criticisms poured in with the same rhythm, almost rehearsed. Why give it to her? You should have sold it and shared the money. We're family, aren't we? Why favor one person? His siblings were the loudest, their jealousy thinly veiled. Of course, you'd choose her, one snapped over the phone. She's always been your favorite. What about us? Don't we matter? His mother's disappointment cut deeper than the rest. "You're spoiling her," she said with finality. "She made her choices, and now she needs to live with them. She should stand on her own feet, not lean on you like a crutch." His father didn't raise his voice, but his silence was worse, cold, heavy, and disapproving. The tension boiled over during a family gathering. They had all gathered for a cousin's engagement party, and though he had hoped the issue would be left aside, it wasn't long before someone brought it up over dinner. Voices rose quickly, turning the evening sour. "You betrayed the family," one uncle declared, slamming his glass on the table. "We've all struggled, yet you decide she's the one who deserves a free ride." His sister, sitting at the corner of the room, shrank into herself, cheeks flushed with shame. Another cousin sneered openly. "She doesn't deserve gifts. She lost her marriage. Now she wants handouts too." The words hit like stones, but what stung more was that no one defended her except him. His mother chimed in again, almost cruel in her certainty. "We're all struggling. Why just her? You've made it clear who matters most to you, and it's not the rest of us." His sister excused herself, leaving the table with her head down. He could see the guilt in her posture, as though the act of receiving help had been a crime. Later that night, she whispered to him, "Maybe you shouldn't have done it. I don't want to be the reason everyone hates you." Her voice cracked, and that broke him more than any accusation. He reassured her the best he could, but inside, he carried a mix of anger and sadness. When it was his turn to speak during the heated confrontation, he kept his tone steady, resisting the urge to match their fury. "It was my car," he said simply, each word deliberate. "My decision. She needed it more than anyone else. I didn't ask for permission because I didn't need it." He explained the logic they refused to see. She had kids, she had responsibilities, and unlike the rest of them, she was starting from nothing. This wasn't about favoritism. It was about fairness. She needed it, you didn't. His calmness seemed only to fuel their rage. One sibling snapped back, "That's not your call to make." Another hissed, "You think you're better than us, don't you?" The air grew heavy with resentment. Threats were made, "Don't expect us to be there when you need us," followed by muttered curses and side remarks. Later, he heard through cousins that his name had become the subject of constant backbiting, that every word of his was twisted into gossip. Slowly, isolation set in. Invitations to family dinners stopped arriving. Group chats went silent whenever he joined. Social media posts began to appear, not mentioning him directly, but crafted with enough venom that the target was obvious. Cryptic lines about betrayal, selfishness, and fake loyalty. He knew who they were aimed at, and though he told himself to ignore them, the sting was real. Even in public settings, the side comments lingered. An aunt once muttered under her breath as he passed by, "So much pride for one old car. How pathetic." The only person who remained firmly in his corner was his sister. She checked in on him often, her gratitude mixed with regret. "I hate that they've turned on you because of me," she admitted one evening, voice thick with emotion. "I never wanted you to carry my burden." But he shook his head. To him, it wasn't a burden. It was a choice, one he didn't regret. Yet that didn't erase the ache of betrayal. These were people he had grown up with, people who had shaped his earliest memories, now treating him like an enemy. The clash of emotions was relentless. Anger at their selfishness, sadness at the crumbling ties, and a quiet mourning for the idea of family he once believed in. In the end, he found himself standing on a lonely shore, looking back at the wreckage. His blood, his kin, the ones who should have supported him, had chosen envy over empathy, and in that growing silence between them, he began to wonder whether family, as he once defined it, had ever truly existed at all. It took him some time, but the more he sat with the fallout, the clearer the picture became. At first, he thought the family's anger had been about principle, about fairness, about him acting without discussion. But slowly, through the cracks of their words and the echoes of their resentment, he realized it had nothing to do with that at all. They weren't furious because of the car itself. They were furious because they didn't get it. Their outrage was rooted not in loyalty, but in greed. That realization burned sharper than any insult. Memories returned to him in fragments, like shards of glass. He remembered the ugly arguments when their grandfather's modest inheritance had been divided. Relatives he once respected had fought bitterly over furniture and trinkets, each claiming they deserved more. He remembered how his older brother once fumed for weeks after their father gave him a small loan for college, insisting it was favoritism. Even birthdays and holidays often became competitions. Who got the bigger gift? Who was left out? Who had been favored? Looking back now, he saw the pattern clearly. His family didn't value each other. They valued possessions, status, leverage. Love and loyalty had always been second to what could be gained. The car was just the latest excuse for the greed that had always been there. In contrast, something remarkable began to happen outside the family's circle. Friends at work, when they heard the story, offered nothing but admiration. "You did the right thing, man," one colleague said. "She needed it. That's what family is supposed to mean." A neighbor clapped him on the shoulder, saying, "Not many brothers would do that. You gave her dignity, not charity." These words struck him because they carried no jealousy, no bitterness, only recognition of kindness. And in their eyes, he felt something his family had denied him: respect. Meanwhile, his sister's life began to shift. With the car, she could juggle her jobs without begging for rides. She could take her children to school on time, pick up groceries without the shame of asking strangers for help, and even look for better opportunities. Slowly, her confidence returned. She smiled more, laughed more, and her kids flourished in small but visible ways. He watched with quiet pride as she stood taller, the weight of her dependence slipping off her shoulders. For him, that transformation was proof enough that his decision had been right all along. But the family didn't see it that way. They clung to their grudges, their gossip, and their sense of entitlement. The breaking point came a few months later when another demand surfaced. A cousin was struggling with debts and boldly suggested that since he had extra money for gifts like cars, he should help out. Another sibling chimed in, hinting at property their parents were considering passing down, insisting he should share fairly before decisions were made. The requests weren't framed as pleas, they were framed as expectations, as if his hard work and resources automatically belonged to them. When he refused, standing firm with a calm but unyielding no, the reaction was volcanic. They accused him again of betrayal, of selfishness, of thinking he was above the family. Shouts filled the room. One relative stormed out. Another declared they'd never speak to him again. The ugliness was so complete that even he, who had long since lowered his expectations, felt stunned by the venom. It was then, in that suffocating chaos, that the truth struck him like a final blow. Nothing would ever satisfy them. No matter what he gave, no matter how much he bent, it would never be enough. Their hunger wasn't for fairness. It was for control, for taking until there was nothing left to give. That night, as he drove home, the weight on his chest finally lifted. For the first time, he saw them clearly, not as the family he wished he had, but as the people they truly were. And with that clarity came the beginning of freedom. He spent days wrestling with the weight of it all, but in the end, the decision rose out of him as naturally as breathing. One evening, after work, he sat down at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold, staring at the quiet of his apartment. The silence was heavy, but for once it felt honest. He replayed everything in his mind, the accusations, the jealousy, the way his sister's gratitude had been overshadowed by their bitterness. For so long, he had told himself that family meant unconditional loyalty. But what he had lived through told another story. He realized family wasn't defined by bloodlines or last names. Family was defined by respect, by support, by the simple act of showing up for each other without asking, "What's in it for me?" That night, he knew bending any further would only break him. He had given what he could, and still it had been twisted into betrayal. So he decided, firmly, finally, that he would stop trying to win their approval. He owed them nothing if all they brought into his life was poison. To make it clear, he wrote a message, short but direct, and sent it to the family group chat. He didn't lace it with anger or accusations. He kept it calm, almost detached. "I've realized I can't keep being part of this cycle. I won't argue anymore, and I won't defend myself. I'll live my life my way, and you can live yours. If respect returns, maybe we can talk again. Until then, I need distance." He turned his phone off after sending it. For the first time in months, he slept soundly. When he met his sister the following weekend, she noticed something different in his eyes, a quiet certainty, a peace she hadn't seen in him before. At first, she hesitated, almost afraid to speak, but then her emotions spilled out. She took his hand, tears welling up as she whispered, "Thank you, not just for the car, but for seeing me. Everyone else only sees my divorce, my mistakes, my weakness. You're the only one who saw me, who believed I still mattered." Her voice broke, but the words carried a truth he would never forget. Their bond, forged through shared pain and loyalty, became unshakable in that moment. He pulled her into a hug, letting her know, without words, that she was never alone, no matter what others said. Life didn't transform overnight, but the change was real. Without the noise of his family's demands, he found himself lighter, freer. He poured more energy into his career, chasing opportunities he had once put off. He invested in friendships that gave back instead of draining him, surrounding himself with people who celebrated his successes rather than envying them. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was his, and for the first time in years, he felt proud of it. His sister, too, began to thrive. With her independence restored, she rebuilt her life piece by piece. She found steadier work, created routines for her kids that gave them stability, and even began to laugh again. She carried herself differently now, not with shame, but with quiet dignity. And every time she drove past his apartment in the old car, she smiled because it wasn't just transportation. It was freedom, a gift that reminded her she was worth believing in. The family, of course, didn't change. They kept gossiping, twisting stories, finding new angles to paint him as selfish. At first, their words reached him through whispers, but over time, he stopped listening altogether. Their bitterness no longer mattered because he had chosen peace over approval. He understood now that letting go wasn't cruelty, it was survival. And in that silence, away from their chaos, he finally found what he had been searching for all along: freedom to live on his own terms alongside the people who truly valued him. Thanks for watching. For more videos, please subscribe. Our channel, Awesome Visual Story,